All right, so we are diving deep into Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Oh, yeah. This one is a classic.
It is, and I know a lot of our listeners are really looking to unlock the secrets inside this book, and
Absolutely.
there are a lot of secrets to unlock.
There are.
It can be pretty dense at times, so I
Yeah.
think that's why we're here to really kind of help guide people and,
Distill it down.
yeah, distill it down to the good stuff.
Yeah.
And not just the 17 principles, which we will definitely be talking about, but also
Yeah.
this secret formula that Andrew Carnegie wanted shared with the world,
That's right.
which we're going to get to.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's really interesting about Think and Grow Rich is that Hill doesn't just rely on one type of source material.
He doesn't know.
He uses historical anecdotes, personal experiences, letters from all kinds of influential figures.
Oh, yeah. He was a great networker. I mean, and
Yeah.
he talked to a lot of people, and you can see
Oh, yeah.
the breadth of his research in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the best examples is the story about Edwin Barnes.
Oh, yeah.
So this guy was absolutely determined to work with Edison.
Right.
Not even for Edison.
But for Edison.
He had this burning desire to work with him, even though he didn't know Edison personally. He didn't have any money.
Yeah.
But he had that laser focus.
He did, and he achieved it.
And he did it.
He did.
It's amazing.
It is. I think this story really illustrates what Hull called the principle of definite desire.
Right?
And I think that's so key. You know, it's not enough to just sort of generally want something. Like, I want to be rich or I want to be happy.
Right.
You need to have that very, very clearly defined picture in your mind.
That laser focus.
That's right. And Barnes had that.
Yeah.
He knew exactly what he wanted.
Yeah.
And he went after it.
Absolutely. And it makes me think of times when maybe my desires haven't been as definite. And I wonder if that's kind of held me back a little bit.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that. But, you know, then there's the story of Darby, the guy who literally stopped digging for gold.
3 feet from gold.
3 feet from gold.
Can you imagine?
Oh my goodness, what a frustrating story that is.
Right.
And so for me, I think about that story a lot, and I think it does represent persistence, but
Right.
I'm also always asking, like, what made him stop?
Oh, that's a good question.
You know, was it doubt? Was it fear?
Right.
Was he just tired? Was he just exhausted?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that's part of the lesson too, is trying to understand what are those psychological barriers
Right.
to our persistence.
Yeah. What are those things that are going to make us stop,
Mm-hmm.
even when we're so close?
Exactly.
Now, Calhill lays out these 6 steps for turning desire into its monetary equivalent.
He does, yeah.
I don't know about you, but I sometimes get a little bit lost on how to actually
Mhm.
apply those steps in real life.
Yeah, well, I think that's something that we can all struggle with, is how to make these kind of abstract principles concrete. So let's take the first step, for example.
Right.
You know, fixing in your mind the exact amount of money you desire.
Okay.
It's not enough to just say, well, I want to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
Instead, be specific, like, I want to earn $250,000 a year by the time I'm 35.
Right.
Or I want to save $50,000 for a down payment on a house by next year.
Okay.
Having those specific targets
Yeah.
makes the goal feel so much more real and tangible.
More attainable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it gives you something concrete to work towards.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the story of the enchanted kettle, you know, where this guy has
Yeah, I love that.
a great story. He has this secret formula scribbled on a piece of paper, and he mixes it in this old kettle,
Right.
and suddenly the kettle's worth a fortune.
It's a great analogy for how ideas can lead to wealth when they're combined with purpose and planning.
Yeah.
Like that clerk who bought the kettle, he wasn't just buying a kettle,
Right.
he was buying the potential, the
Yeah.
power of the idea.
Yeah. And to generate those big ideas,
Mm,
Hill outlines 13 principles for success, and he kind of describes these as stimuli
that's right.
that can influence the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
It's like a secret code
Yeah.
to unlock our full potential.
You know, it's not enough to just have a good idea.
Right.
You have to know how to activate it, nurture it, and bring it to life.
Right.
And these 13 principles are the tools that help us do that.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about a couple of them so far, like
Yes,
desire and persistence.
that's right.
But there's also faith, autosuggestion,
Specialized knowledge.
organized planning decision, and more.
Absolutely.
And each of these plays a role in shaping our thoughts and actions towards that success.
Yeah.
I love how Hill really emphasizes that knowledge is only potential power.
Oh, it's so true.
It's got to be organized and directed to an end goal, Otherwise, it's useless.
It's true. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't know how to apply it,
Right.
it's useless.
It's just a bunch of facts.
Absolutely. And the way we access knowledge has really evolved since Hill's time,
Yeah.
you know, with the internet and everything.
Online learning.
Online learning.
Yeah. But that principle that he had of self-discipline and finishing what you start is still so relevant today.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's even more important now because we are just bombarded with information.
So much information.
So much information. How do you filter?
Right.
How do you focus?
It's like you need a bridge to get from knowledge to action.
That's right.
Right. And I think sometimes you need a good architect to build that bridge.
You do?
And it reminds me of the story of that woman who helped her son land his dream job by creating a plan book,
Oh, yeah. What a great story.
showcasing all his skills.
She understood that in a competitive job market, you need to present yourself effectively.
You got to stand out.
You have to stand out. Yeah, I have to market your personal brand.
Yeah.
Craft a compelling story. Highlight your value proposition.
You got to have that brief.
You need a brief, like a lawyer presenting a case. That's right. Make it impossible for employers to ignore you.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because, Hill really did have this foresight into how Joe BS were evolving into partnerships.
He did.
Yeah.
He talked about the importance of employers and employees working together,
Right.
guided by the golden rule rather than the rule of gold.
Yeah.
It's not just about individual gain. It's
Yeah.
about the benefit of all.
I think a lot of companies are still struggling with that today.
They are.
But it's a powerful vision.
It is, for sure.
A more collaborative and fulfilling work environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Hill also lays out 30 major causes of failure,
He does, yes.
which can be kind of daunting.
It can be a little scary to look at that list
Right.
and think, oh man, am I guilty of any of these?
Oh, am I doing these things that are going to...
But I think it's a good exercise in self-reflection.
Yeah.
I identify those potential roadblocks so you can address them head on.
Address them there?
And the good news is only one cause on the list.
Oh, really? Is something we can't really control, which is unfavorable hereditary background.
Oh, wow. Well,
Everything else we have the power to change.
that's encouraging.
It is, yeah.
Hill also isn't afraid to discuss some potentially controversial topics like the role of organized capital.
Yeah, which often gets demonized,
Yeah.
especially in certain political circles.
Right.
But Hill uses this very simple example.
Okay.
A family in New York City having breakfast,
Right.
grapefruit, coffee, and eggs.
Okay.
And he breaks down all the complex systems and resources that had to come together
Wow.
just to make that simple meal possible.
Yeah.
It's a really eye-opening illustration of how organized capital creates opportunity
Okay.
and wealth.
So it's about looking at the complete picture
It is.
instead of accepting a simplified narrative.
That's right.
Okay.
It's about understanding both sides of the coin.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these topics can be controversial, especially today.
Oh, absolutely.
But we're just trying to, present Hill's ideas as objectively as possible.
Exactly.
Right.
We're not endorsing any particular viewpoint.
Right.
Just trying to give you the information.
As it is in the book.
That's right.
And I think that's really important for our listeners to keep in mind as we
Absolutely.
really continue on with
Yeah.
this deep dive.
So you ready to move on to the next section?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah. Do it. All right. So, as we're talking about taking action and really pursuing those definite desires, it's important to acknowledge the things that can hold us back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Hill doesn't sugarcoat this at all. He dedicates a whole chapter to what he calls the 6 ghosts of fear.
6 ghosts of fear. Okay, that sounds a little spooky.
It does a little bit.
Like,
right?
what are we talking about here?
Well, he's talking about those insidious specters that haunt our minds and whisper doubts and feed our insecurities.
Right.
They can really sabotage our efforts without us even realizing it.
So he lays out these 6 fears. Fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death.
Wow. That's a pretty comprehensive list of anxieties.
It is.
I think we've probably all experienced at least one of those.
Oh, absolutely.
If not all of them.
At some point in our lives, yeah.
At some point. Yeah, let's break those down a little bit. Starting with the fear of poverty.
Okay.
I feel like that's one that's become even more prevalent in recent years with all the economic uncertainty.
Absolutely. This fear is really deeply ingrained in our collective psyche.
Yeah.
It stems from this long history of, scarcity and competition for resources.
Right.
And you're right. I think it's been amplified in recent years by all the negative news and the political rhetoric.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere, and it creates this sense of poverty consciousness,
Oh, wow.
this belief that there's just not enough to go around,
Right.
and that can be really debilitating.
Yeah. So how do we combat that poverty consciousness?
Well, Hill talks about cultivating a money consciousness, but what does that actually mean?
Right. How do you do that?
How do you actually do that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it starts with recognizing the symptoms of this fear in our own lives.
Okay.
Indecision, procrastination,
Yeah.
letting other people do our thinking for us,
Okay.
constantly making excuses. These are all signs that this fear is taking root.
Right.
And so instead of focusing on what we lack,
Mm-hmm.
we need to shift our attention to the abundance that already exists
Okay.
and really believe in our ability to create more.
It's that mindset shift.
It is a mindset shift, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, the fear of criticism is another big one for me personally.
Sure.
I'm definitely someone who can get caught up in worrying what other people think.
Yeah.
And that can be really paralyzing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This fear is a creativity killer.
Yeah.
It keeps us playing small, afraid to stand out, afraid to take risks
Right.
because we're so worried about judgment and disapproval.
Right.
And so we end up making choices that aren't truly aligned with our hearts.
Right?
Right.
I mean, how many people stay in jobs that they hate?
Exactly.
Or relationships that aren't working?
A relationship, yeah, just because they're afraid of what other people might say.
Right.
And so they end up sacrificing their own happiness for the sake of appearances.
Yeah. It's like a life of quiet desperation.
They can be, yeah.
Hill uses the example of King Edward VIII and Wallace Simpson.
Oh, yeah.
They obviously faced so much criticism for their relationship.
They did.
But they chose love
Oh.
over societal expectations.
They did.
Uh-huh.
It's a really powerful example of choosing your own path.
Yeah, it's inspiring, but it's also like, how do you find that strength?
Right.
How do you
do that?
How do you defy those conventions?
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
it takes a conscious decision
Okay.
to prioritize your own values and your own happiness over the opinions of others.
Okay.
It's about developing that strong sense of self-worth
Mhm.
and really trusting your own judgment.
Trusting yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You can't please everyone.
You can't please everyone. That's right.
Yeah. That's a good reminder.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to not please everyone.
Now, the fear of ill health is another one that really resonates with me, especially after the past few years.
Oh, I think we can all relate to that.
It's so easy to get caught up in worrying about every ache and pain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're bombarded with information about diseases and health risks all the time.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere, and it's easy to become hyper aware of our bodies.
Right. Every little twinge.
Every little twinge, yeah.
And Hill actually was pretty ahead of his time in understanding that mind-body connection.
He was.
You know how negative thoughts and stress can actually weaken our immune systems,
Absolutely.
make us more susceptible to illness?
That's right. He tells that fascinating story about the young man who's hospitalized after a bad breakup,
Oh, yeah.
and the doctor prescribes him a dose of romance
I love that
in
stuff.
the form of this charming
Oh,
nurse,
it's a great story.
and he starts to recover.
It's amazing.
It really highlights the power of positive emotions in healing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about, taking care of our physical bodies.
It's got the whole picture.
It's our mental and emotional well-being as well.
It's everything, yeah.
It's all connected.
Now, the fear of loss of love, I think that's another really universal one.
It is.
We all crave connection. We crave belonging.
We do.
And the thought of rejection or abandonment can be terrifying.
It is a primal fear. Yeah, absolutely.
It is.
It's rooted in our need for social connection and intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
And it can manifest in all sorts of unhealthy ways, jealousy, possessiveness, codependency.
Yeah.
But Hill argues that true love shouldn't be based on fear or control.
Okay.
It should be based on trust and respect and freedom.
Right.
It's about finding a partner who celebrates your individuality,
Yeah.
not someone who tries to confine you or diminish your light.
That's beautiful.
It is.
Now, as we get older, I think the fear of old age starts to creep in.
It does, yeah. It's not just about the physical changes.
Right. It's not just about wrinkles and gray hair.
Right. It's the societal perception of aging.
It is.
The fear of becoming irrelevant or invisible.
Yeah, or burden on
Yep.
others.
And there's also that fear of declining health, financial insecurity,
Absolutely.
social isolation.
All of those things.
Yeah.
But Hill challenges those stereotypes.
Okay.
He talks about the wisdom and the experience, the
Yeah.
self-control that comes with age.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be a time of decline and despair.
Right.
It can be a time of continued growth and fulfillment and contribution.
Yeah, that's a really empowering way to look at it.
It is.
And then finally, we have the ultimate fear, the one we all have to face at some point,
Yeah,
the fear of death.
the big one.
Yeah, the great unknown.
Yeah.
It's a one experience we can't avoid.
We can't.
And I think a lot of times this fear is amplified by cultural beliefs or religious doctrines or just the fear of what might be beyond this life. Um, but Hill really encourages us to face this fear head on,
It does.
to accept death as this inevitable part of life.
It is.
And he even draws on physics
He does, yeah.
to remind us that energy can't be destroyed.
It can only be transformed.
Yeah, it's a comforting thought
It is.
that even in death, our energy continues in some form.
That's right.
And I think the way he puts it is that the best way to overcome the fear of death is to live a life that is so full of purpose and passion and meaning
Absolutely.
that we don't have time to dwell on death.
That's right. When we're fully engaged in life,
Right.
we're not thinking about death.
Yeah.
We're living.
So we've kind of gone through these 6 ghosts, these 6 fears that can really haunt us.
We have.
But Hill doesn't just leave us with this list of anxieties.
No, he doesn't.
He offers some antidotes, some tools that we can use to confront these fears
He does.
and reclaim our power.
Yeah, and he really emphasizes the importance of decision,
Okay.
making those clear and firm choices. Action, taking those concrete steps to move towards our goals.
Right.
Faith, believing in ourselves and our ability to overcome obstacles.
Mhm.
And purpose, having that clear sense of why we're here and what we want to achieve.
It's like he's saying, don't let these fears define you.
Exactly.
You have the power to choose a different path,
You do.
a path of courage and growth and
Yeah.
fulfillment.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the tools that he offers is this concept of autosuggestion,
Oh, yes.
which is using affirmations or positive self-talk to kind of reprogram our subconscious minds.
Yeah.
He provides a really powerful affirmation for building self-confidence.
I see. What is it?
He says, I know that I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. Therefore, I demand of myself persistent, continuous action toward its attainment, and I here and now promise to render such action.
Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's a declaration of intent,
It is, yeah.
a commitment
Yeah.
to take control
Yeah.
of your thoughts and your actions.
And it reminds me that our subconscious minds are so powerful,
They are.
but they're also so suggestible.
They're very suggestible.
Whatever we consistently feed them,
Right.
whether it's positive or negative,
Mhm.
is going to take root,
Mhm.
and it's going to influence our beliefs and our behaviors.
That's right.
So it's important to be mindful of those thoughts.
It is be mindful of what you're feeding your mind.
Yeah, be mindful of what we're nurturing.
Absolutely.
Wurzel also talks about the power of our emotions, how they can actually attract experiences
Oh, yeah. He was ahead of his time on that one.
that match our dominant emotional state.
He talks about tuning your emotional radio
Yeah.
to the frequency of success, which I think is a really cool analogy.
It is. It's like you're attracting those experiences that are aligned with how you're feeling.
Absolutely.
And he was really fascinated by some of the scientists who were exploring ESP and the power of the mind.
He was really interested in that connection between thought and reality.
It's like our thoughts and emotions are creating these vibrations
They are.
that influence the world around us.
That's right.
And it makes me think about the responsibility we have to cultivate those positive thoughts and emotions,
Absolutely.
not just for our own well-being,
Right.
for the collective.
It's about recognizing that interconnectedness.
Yeah.
That we're not just isolated individuals.
Right.
We're part of a larger web of consciousness.
Yeah. And everything we do
Mm-hmm.
affects the whole.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Hill also provides some practical exercises to help us develop those mental powers
He does.
and overcome fear.
Yeah.
And one that I find really intriguing is the idea of creating these imaginary council meetings.
Oh, I love that one.
So he suggests, assembling this group of wise and inspiring figures
Okay.
from history or from our own lives
Right.
and having these imaginary conversations with them.
Yeah, seeking their guidance and wisdom
Yeah.
on the challenges you're facing.
It's like having this personal board of advisors.
That's right. Available 24/7.
24/7. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And he also emphasizes the importance of regular self-reflection,
Oh, absolutely.
asking ourselves these empowering questions.
Yeah. What are my weaknesses?
Yeah.
How can I overcome procrastination?
What are my strengths?
What are my goals?
Yeah.
It's about being honest with yourself
Yeah.
Acknowledging your shortcomings,
Right.
but also recognizing your strengths and your potential.
Yeah.
And then, of course, surrounding yourself with positive, supportive people.
Oh, that's so important.
It is.
People who believe in your dreams.
The people we associate with have such a profound influence on our thoughts and beliefs and actions.
It's true, and sometimes we don't even realize it.
We don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Hill's philosophy is just such a powerful call to action.
It is.
It's this reminder that we have the power to shape our own destiny.
Absolutely. He's
Yeah.
urging us to take responsibility for our thoughts, beliefs, and actions, recognizing that we're not just victims of circumstance,
Right.
but creators of our own reality.
Yeah.
It's about embracing our power,
Right.
overcoming our fears,
Mhm.
and living a life filled with purpose and passion and abundance.
I can't help but notice that throughout this deep dive,
Yeah,
we've been circling around this idea of Carnegie's secret formula,
we have.
but we haven't quite cracked the code yet.
Not quite, but we've touched on many of its elements.
Okay.
The power of thought, the importance of definite desire,
Right.
persistence, specialized knowledge.
The mastermind.
The mastermind principle, the role of faith.
Mhm.
But there's something more,
There's a key ingredient.
a key ingredient that ties it all together.
What could it be?
What could it be? What do you think?
You really got me thinking there for a second.
Right.
We talk about so much, the desire, the faith, the persistence,
Mastermind.
even those fear ghosts.
Right.
What's the real engine that drives all of that? What takes it from an idea
Oh, that's a good question.
to a reality?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's the element that Hill keeps hammering on throughout the whole book.
Okay.
Maybe so much that it's easy to miss.
Okay.
It's action.
Action.
Yeah, it's the bridge between thought and achievement.
It's not enough to just want it
No.
or even believe in it.
You got to do it.
You got to take action.
Absolutely.
And you're right when we were talking about those 6 steps to turn desire into its monetary equivalent. Every single step involves action.
It does.
You have to define the amount. You have to figure out what you'll give in return.
Set a deadline.
Create a plan, write it down, read it every day.
It's not passive dreaming.
Right.
It's deliberate, focused action.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And even when we were talking about overcoming those fears,
Mm-hmm.
all of Hill's antidotes involve action.
They do.
Making a decision that's an action.
That's right.
Taking the first step, even though you're scared,
Mm-hmm.
that's action.
Yeah.
Building a supportive network,
And that's action.
that's action too.
That's right. Even those imaginary council meetings he talks about.
Yeah.
That's mental action. Well, that's a good point. It's a way to actively seek guidance and inspiration.
It is. So it's like all those principles that we've talked about,
Mm-hmm.
they're like the ingredients in a recipe,
I like that analogy.
but they won't create anything on their own.
Right, you got to put them in the oven.
You got to mix them together. You got to put them in the oven.
Yeah, that's right.
So the action is the heat that brings everything together.
Yeah,
Right.
the catalyst.
So if we were to sort of try to sum up Carnegie's secret formula,
Okay.
could we say it's something like definite desire plus focused action,
I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
fueled by faith and persistence?
I love it.
Yeah.
And of course, we got to remember those supporting elements.
Right.
Specialized knowledge, the mastermind principle overcoming fear.
But without action, they just remain potential.
Absolutely. Like
Yeah.
seeds that have never been planted.
Yeah. And action is the planting of the seed and the nurturing and
Watching it grow.
watching it grow. Yeah, this has been a really insightful deep dive. I feel like we've really uncovered some of the core principles here,
I agree.
those potential pitfalls to avoid,
Absolutely.
and the power of taking action.
And I think ultimately Think and Grow Rich is not just a self-help book. It's really a philosophy for living.
It is. It's a way of life.
It's a way of life. Yeah.
And it's about understanding that our minds have this incredible power to shape our reality.
They do.
But then we have to take responsibility for turning those thoughts into action.
Absolutely. Thoughts without action are just dreams.
They are. So what's the next step for you, listener?
Yeah. What's that burning desire that you have?
What are you going to transform into action?
What goals are you ready to pursue?
With unwavering faith and persistence.
The power is within you.
The tools are there.
The journey begins with a single step.
Take that step.
Go out there and make it happen.
And that's it for this deep dive into Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
See you next time.